Welcome to the Monday, June 14th, Maplewood City Council meeting. Tonight, I wanted to open up the meeting by thanking my fellow council members for an act that we took at our last council meeting in May, which was to unanimously approve the climate adaptation plan for the city of Maplewood. This, in between our last council meeting and tonight, I was a panelist with the League of Women Voters Environmental Forum. And the panelists were mayors from the city of Roseville, Lauderdale, Little Canada, Falcon Heights, and Maplewood. And I have to say that I learned an awful lot from the other mayors. It was a great panel discussion about what our cities are doing environmentally. And I always learn from those kinds of things. Some interesting kinds of things. I learned about jumping worms, and I learned about a noxious weed that we really don't want in the city, called the Japanese knotweed, that is actually toxic. And these jumping worms sound pretty awful. But anyway, I want to thank my council members because I got to talk about some of the things that we're doing in Maplewood, and we are such a green city. I was able to explain that we're, the 5th Step Green Step City program. And, we're at the highest step. They have to create more steps because we are so green and focused so on our environment and sustainability. I talked a little bit about the green team. I talked about the fact that our city tracks the power usage at all city buildings, that we have dedicated staff to environmental services, that we've replaced our lights in city buildings with LED lights, that we have organized collection in Maplewood, that we have a green building code, that we have a green fire station, that we do an annual tree sale, that we have an environmental and natural resources commission, that we have a green purchasing policy, and kind of the icing on the cake was the climate adaptation plan. And I will tell you that we are the only city of the 5 that were on the panel to be this far into sustainability and environmental issues. I would encourage anyone listening tonight, if you're interested in learning more about our climate adaptation plan, it's on our website. I did tell the other mayors that, and I got thank you emails from them. And phone calls indicating that they certainly are going to be reviewing what we're doing. So, council members, we're out in front, and this is really important. If anyone questions, climate change, all we have to do is take a look at this string of days over 100 degrees in June. So anyway, I just want to thank my council members for being so green, and it just gave me so much information to talk about at this forum. I also want to thank Sean Finwall for providing background information, and also thank Councilmember Juniman. She is so green that I have told her this in person. I think she bleeds green. So anyway, thank you for that, for giving me so much to talk about at the Environmental Forum.
Mayor?
So, yes,
Mayor?
Councilmember Juniman.
I have to tell you that I heard from a couple of people and you blew them away. You blew them away.
Well, that's very nice. It's really this,
Thank you.
My fellow council members and our staff, we all have worked so hard at looking at these sustainability issues, and it really matters. It really does. And so anyway, thank you to all of you. So, okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Sint, will you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here.
And Councilmember Knudsen will not be joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Council members, moving on to the approval of the agenda, is there a motion?
I move approval.
Oh,
Okay, that was really,
that was
I
Coral,
couldn't,
wasn't it?
that was, I couldn't tell who said it first. Who was it?
Coral. I don't know.
Pick one and then the other. Kathy can
Okay.
say it now. Second.
Okay,
All right.
Councilmember Cave moved to approve the agenda. Councilmember Juniman seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to the approval of the minutes for the May 24th City Council workshop. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve of the May 24th, 2021 minutes.
Second.
Moved by Villavicencio, seconded by Juniman. Motion to approve the May 24th, 2021 City Council workshop meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to the May 24th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the May 24th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I have a correction.
Correction? Where is it?
Page 3, under council presentations award. It says the city was receiving Global Electronics Council Award for our efforts. It should say with purchasing energy conserving electronics and recycling them. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Thank you for that correction. Okay. We've had a motion and a second. Let's take a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to appointments and presentations, council calendar update. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams and members of the City Council. The council calendar update is just a snapshot, a look at our upcoming meetings and some community events. For our June 28th workshop, we're going to continue our discussion of the American Recovery Plan allocations, and we will hear a report on the Washington County Highway 36 corridor transit study. And at the council meeting, we will be looking at the administrative hearing process ordinance, which has been in the works for quite some time. On July 12th, we're going to have our first in-person meeting in the council chambers. Our workshop, we're looking at a meeting in July, either the 12th or the second meeting in July, to have a joint meeting with our Housing and Economic Development Commission to get their input on the American Recovery Plan funds that we're going to receive, and to help you with some of the prioritization that will need to happen in those allocations. In terms of things that we've been working on, the parking space requirement review, that has been folded in with part of our zoning ordinance amendment process, which are those changes that happen through our comp plan, our revised comp plan, or 2040 comp plan, or 2030 comp plan changes. And so that is being folded into those initiatives, and we'll be hearing from the Community Development Department a little more on that in the coming months. The administrative hearing process for code violations, as I indicated, will be discussed and reviewed at our meeting on June 28th. In terms of community events, I am very happy, and I know we've said this before at the meeting, but we will be having fireworks at Hazelwood Park at dusk on July 4th. There are not any other festivities planned, but families are welcome to enjoy the park as long as they like that day. We will have public safety staff around and park staff around to help make sure that event goes off without any issues. On August 3rd, pleased to say we're going to have National Night Out. And that will be from 5 to 9. And again, our police department is taking reservations. And for the newer members, it is a really great community event. We have some of the biggest numbers of block parties anywhere in the metro area. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out in the neighborhoods this summer. So with that, Mayor, that is the extent of my presentation. Happy to take any questions or hear about anything that you would like us to look into or research on your behalf.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. I wanted to bring up one thing, and this actually came out of the environmental forum that we talked about. One of our neighboring communities, Little Canada, is having a really successful program where they brought in goats to take care of buckthorn and other noxious kinds of weeds that I guess goats love to eat. And they've actually rolled that into a kind of a community event where families go out to the different parks to go watch the goats. And they've made it really a fun event. The mayor was talking about it, and I thought that sounded like a fun thing. And I wanted to see if my fellow council members thought bringing goats in. Now I'm talking about next summer. I think it's too late to try to do something like that. But the mayor was actually talking about the fact that they found that it's actually less expensive and certainly better for the environment to bring in a herd of goats. They're obviously contained in an area where they want, the weeds and the buckthorn to be eaten up. But they're making it a really fun event out at the parks. So that's something that I'd like to maybe get some additional information. If my fellow council members thinks that, goats next summer sounds like something fun that we could do. Councilmember Villavicencio, what do you think about goats?
Well, I have actually heard of that before for the buckthorn, and so I'm all for it. I think we should look into it.
Okay, Councilmember Cave.
And I agree. I know Lake Elmo does it, and a neighbor up at the cabin does it to his hunting land. He does it himself. So I think it's worth looking at the financial piece of it and, getting different bids because I know it can be expensive.
Okay, Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, Mayor, our ENRC looked into it once before. We do have to look at the expense, and then part of the success is if you have, shall I say, a simple place to confine them. You have to think of a way to contain them in the area you want treated, shall we say.
Right,
and
right.
I don't know about Little Canada, but I do know that St. Paul did on the east side, and they had some issues with steal a goat.
Oh, sure.
I'm not kidding. I wish I was, but I'm not.
At this point, we're not deciding anything. We're just asking.
No, but
staff.
I'm just saying those are the things we need to look into and ask questions.
Yeah, to look into it for us and see. I think it could be a really fun event for next summer. Out at our parks, families going out to look at the goats, find the goats. Does anyone else have any other ideas that they would like to bring forward that they're interested in, or any questions for City Manager Coleman? Councilmember Villavicencio.
None at this time.
Councilmember Kate.
And not at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Not now, thank you.
Okay. There you go. Okay, next there were no council presentations tonight, so we're moving on to the 2020 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, which I must say was a very comprehensive financial report.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell our council members that City Council Member Juniman and myself, we are on the audit committee. This was created, a few years back, where the mayor and a council member meet with the auditor without staff being present to go over the financials. And, we can ask any questions that we want. And Councilmember Juniman and I had that meeting with the auditor earlier today. So with that, Ms. Paulseth, I am going to turn it over to you to get started. And then we will have, I'll turn it over to you to start.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Abrams. Just a couple of quick announcements before I introduce our external auditors. As noted, this is the completion. This is the kind of the final step in the process of completing the comprehensive annual financial report. You will note that I have called it the annual comprehensive financial report in the staff report, and done that for a reason. So the GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association, has recently done away with the acronym that was associated with Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, so CAFR, and it is now ACFR. Although we still refer to it as the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, but from a practical standpoint, you'll probably just hear us calling it the annual report. A couple of different reasons. I guess secondly, the GFOA is kind of got a war on acronyms going on right now, and so they're trying to simplify things as much as possible. But the main reason is the acronym for CAFR, when spoken, it was found out to be identical to a racial slur or a very offensive term in South Africa during the apartheid era. And with GFOA really being, mostly North America, United States and Canada, there still are members from all over the world. And so it came to their attention, and so they immediately dropped the acronym. And so we're still kind of working through what we're going to call it. But so you won't hear us using that acronym anymore like you have heard me use in the past. So we're just going to call it the annual report. So secondly, that Mayor Abrams already pointed out that we had a council auditor meeting, and the audit committee, for those members who aren't familiar with that concept. I believe it started back in, I think around 2002, with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of Congress, when Congress was attempting to get a handle on some of the corporate fraud that was going on at the time. And it was broad enough that it, could apply to local governments as well. And what I mean by it is a audit oversight committee. So just exactly how the mayor explained it, that they're able to meet with our external auditors without management present, for the simple reason that if council does have concerns that there may be, that the management may be maybe hiding something or maybe doing something inappropriate, they are able to meet with our external auditors and resolve any concerns without having management present. So it's not necessarily a requirement. A lot of local governments don't do it. Many do. I've always offered it to any council that I've worked for. And it's just a very important part of kind of the fraud control aspect of the audit. So we're very thankful that Councilmember Juniman and Mayor Abrams participated in that, and also participated in some fraud interviews earlier on in the audit process. So thank you very much to the council and to the staff and the finance department. It's been 6 months approximately that we've been working on this financial report and the audit. We go back and forth many times with the information that there's roughly in a given year, maybe $70 to $80 million flowing through the city. So there's a lot to track. And our auditors, want to produce a very quality audit. So we work right up until the deadline for the packet. Things are being looked at and tweaked and revised, just right up until the very last minute, just so that they can provide the most quality audit possible with the time frame given. So with that, I would like to introduce Matt Mayer, who is the audit partner from Bergen KDV, and he will present the annual audit report.
Thank you.
Matt, welcome to the council.
All right. Thank you, Finance Director Paulseth. And Mayor Abrams, members of the council, thank you for the invitation to present this evening. Happy to report an excellent audit this year, represented by 4 reports that were in your materials. Our main objective with the audit is to provide an opinion on the financial statements so that users of them can be assured of their accuracy. We do that through an independent auditor's report, which you'll find in front of the financial statements. It is an unmodified or clean opinion this year, which is the best we can offer, and does provide that assurance of accuracy. The second report is in a separate document along with 2 others. It's called a Government Auditing Standards Report. And this is a report on internal control. Internal control is the processes and procedures that you have at the city to safeguard the city's assets and to ensure accurate financial reporting at the end of each year. I'm happy to report in our analysis, we found no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. The city has an excellent set of policies, and more importantly, an excellent set of procedures and checks and balances to ensure those policies are implemented at a practical level and provide the safeguards and accuracy which they are intended to provide. This year, there is a third report that you haven't seen for a while, if ever, and that is called a Single Audit Uniform Guidance Report. When the city receives more than $750,000 in federal funding, the federal government requires that a compliance audit be performed to ensure that those dollars were spent according to the terms into the agreement in which you enter. Obviously, with the CARES funding that the city received in response to the COVID pandemic in 2020, you received significantly more than that $750,000 number. And as a result, we were required to perform a single audit for the first time in many years at Maplewood. It's less a financial audit as it is a compliance audit, as we're looking at the internal controls surrounding compliance with the grant and to ensure that the grant was spent appropriately. And again, happy to report no issues on either for 2020. So a good report back to the federal government on the use of your CARES funding for the year. And the final report, which is one you've also seen in the past, is a Minnesota legal compliance report. It's required by the Office of the State Auditor, who wants to ensure municipalities are following statutes associated with accounting matters related to state statute. We're talking about things like contracting and bidding, conflicts of interest, deposits and investments, and again, a clean report, no compliance findings there for 2020. So we're providing 4 reports this evening for the city. All 4 of those reports are the best that we can provide. Our thanks and certainly a credit to the members of the finance department at the city of Maplewood under the leadership of Finance Director Paulseth, and also want to recognize Assistant Finance Director Joe Rube as well, who was a very intricate part of the audit this year. So credit to them for the work that they do, and it's certainly reflected in the reports that we're providing you this evening. With that assurance, I would like to provide you some financial analysis from our perspective. This was the topic of discussion this afternoon with the audit committee, and I'll provide an abbreviated version of it. But I would like to discuss the general fund operations, which is the main operating fund of the city, along with a quick look at each of your enterprise funds, just to ensure that the council is conscious of their status and how they performed during 2020. When we look at the general fund, we'll look at the revenue stream first. That was up about 10.7% from the prior year. Taxes, the levy was the most significant portion of that, but there was also a significant increase in charges for services and licenses and permits. The school district in the area was undergoing significant renovations, and along with that came engineering fees, charges for services, plan check type fees, and licenses and permits activity that generated significant revenue over and above expectations for the year. The local government aid was a little bit higher than the prior year, and police and fire aid were also higher as well. One of the better ways to look at how things went for you on the revenue side is in the context of the budget. The city had planned for just shy of $26 million in revenue coming in during the 2020 fiscal year. And actually, revenue came in about $193,000 better than that, almost 1% better than that. You can see that one of the major revenue streams that came in significantly over budget was the licenses and permits that I was talking about. But interestingly, charges for services was significantly below budget. And one of the major revenue streams in that charges for services line item is the recreation fees, the park fees, the program fees associated with the programming in your Parks and Rec department. And obviously, things were on a shutdown or a hiatus for 2020, so the revenue stream along with the operations from that activity was relatively dormant for most of the year. As a result, you can see the revenue falling short of expectations. Again, on the plus side, investment income coming in better than anticipated. And interestingly as well, property taxes were a little bit below budget, but 99% of your property taxes were collected according to the budget. So you might expect that to be a worse number, but delinquencies did not see a significant rise. In fact, that variance that you're seeing there is mostly from tax appeals as opposed to non-payments during the year. So the revenue budget came in very well and great projections by city management, and that sets you up well for solid performance in the fund during the year. One last way to look at it is that about 76% or 3/4 of your revenue in the general fund comes from the property tax. So we are reliant on the citizens and the taxpayers to cover a significant portion of that. The variable revenue streams of licenses and permits, intergovernmental charges for services are certainly important, but they make up a significant minority of the revenue going into the fund. If we go back a year, very similar allocation among the various sources. Now, the other side of the ledger is expenditures. And expenditures for the year were up about 8.3%. The fire department was a major factor there, as well as the police department. As we think about the COVID response, most of the new cost or additional costs that the city incurred in relation to that fell to the fire department line items. So you're going to see here that fire expenses for the year were up almost $500,000 over the prior year. Now, there were some operational inflationary increases within the department, but again, most of that discretionary spending in response to the pandemic fell on their shoulders from a budget standpoint or accounting standpoint. Police department was also a big factor. Their expenditures were up about $400,000 for the year. They also played a significant role in the public safety response, but they did also add a full-time equivalent during the year and add some other additional costs that contributed to that. But that pretty much gives the story on the expenditure side year over year on the general fund. If we look at the budget, the council authorized $23.3 million in spending in the general fund for the year. And actually, the city only spent about $22.5 million. That's about $750,000 under budget, or a variance of about 3.2%. And as you can see here in the variance line, nearly all departments fell under budget for the year to varying extents. Only fire, which I mentioned earlier, which was the main department responsible for the COVID response, and the finance department, who also had some additional costs associated with that and the compliance, were the main factors there. The other departments fell significantly below budget or slightly below budget. The significantly below budget items include park and recreation, which I spoke about with you earlier because of the going on hiatus or kind of shutting things down for the year. And also the police department. That one is a challenging department to budget. A lot of personnel vacancies throughout the year, kind of almost in a constant state of restaffing. And as a result, some of those vacancies drove a below budget number on the personnel costs for the year. But overall, the department heads across the board did a nice job in responding to the budget you as a council established for them, and certainly stayed within the parameters overall. And the couple departments that came over, we have very legitimate reasons and explanations for that. I'm going to put that all together for you then. And the main way to evaluate your general fund is through that budget. And as we saw, it was a very successful year. Administration did an excellent job enacting the budget that you as a council authorized for 2020. Now, the hope is that budget, if executed as intended, will actually land the city at a financial position which is in line with the fund balance policy of the city. And the policy says that you want to have between 40 and 50% of annual expenditures within fund balance, within your unassigned fund balance. And your unassigned fund balance of about $11 million at the end of 2020 represented 48%. So you're right within those parameters of 40 to 50%, actually a little bit on the high end of that, which is a good place to be. It allows not only for a reasonable level of health for cash flow purposes, which is important, but perhaps a small contingency fund as well, which is a great place to be, especially with the uncertainties moving forward here. One thing I do want to point out that during this 5-year period, you have always been within that financial range and financial policy that you've established for yourself, but you can see you've gone from the low end of 40% 5 years ago back in 2016 to the high end here in the last couple of years at that 48, 49% level. As I mentioned earlier, about 75% of your general fund is financed or funded through property taxes. So we do need to acknowledge the contribution of the citizens and the taxpayers in the city, and I also want to acknowledge the council as they make some tough decisions on what that ask is going to be from the taxpayers on an annual basis. I think this chart provides some good context for that. There are 3 lines in this chart. The first is in blue, which represents the market value of the city, property tax values over the course of the last 5 years. You can see some nice increases over that time. Another line to look at is the actual property tax levy here at the city in green, and that has grown as well, but you're going to notice that it's not at the same rate or the same acceleration as the growth in the market value. So what happens then is that you are asking less of the taxpayers in relation to the growth in the market value in the city, and ultimately then the city's tax rate goes down, and it has gone down from about 49% back in 2016 to a little over 44% here in 2020. So again, the story is that yes, the levy has grown, and yes, market values have grown, but the levy has not grown in proportion to the market value growth. In fact, it has been less. And as a result of that, the taxpayers have benefited from a lower tax rate and a declining tax rate each of the last 5 years. A quick look at each of the city's enterprise funds, just to wrap things up with you tonight. One of those is the ambulance fund, and we look at the enterprise funds a little bit differently. They're not as much budget oriented as they are enterprise or business type driven. And so we can look at whether they're generating operating income or not. And if they're generating an operating loss, we want to address that and be conscious of that. If it's an operating income for the year, positive results, we want to ensure that that's adequate to cover not only operations, but also perhaps some other obligations that that fund might have. Interestingly enough, the number of calls that the ambulance fund took in 2020 was actually down. And you can see that the revenue was impacted by that in 2020. Expenses stayed constant and continued to increase. And as a result, for the first time in 4 years, there was actually an operating loss in this fund, totaling about $332,000 or so for the year. Now, this fund had adequate reserves. It has about $1.2 million in cash, but it did take a little bit of a hit during the year, and we want to be conscious of that. It can't take a lot of years like this, but we're hoping that 2020 is an anomaly, and we will report back to you in 2021 as to how operations go there. But here's an excellent example of what fund balance is for. As a result of having those reserves from prior year successful operations, you were able to absorb an off year like 2020 very easily. The environmental fund had a good year as well. Revenue was relatively flat, expenses were relatively flat, and performance was almost identical to the prior year. In fact, almost within $1 when we look at operating income excluding depreciation. Now, this fund is making significant contributions to other funds within the city. It makes contributions to the capital funds to assist with financing and funding the capital needs of the city, and actually did make about $3.1 million of transfers out to those funds during the year. As a result, the cash position of this fund did decline about $800,000. You still do have fairly significant reserves in this fund that will be there for operations, but we did make a significant request of this fund to help capital activity during the year, and we're going to want to monitor the performance of this fund and ensure that the subsequent asks that you might have going forward can be sustained and maintain this fund's operations as well as a reasonable level of financial health. Recycling fund, basically kind of hardwired to break even. We don't anticipate to make significant operating income in this fund. If you're breaking even, covering costs, and have reasonable reserves, you're going to be in a good place, and that's exactly what this fund is doing. Despite a small operating loss in 2020, it does have about $250,000 of reserves, and that's more than enough to get by for 3 or 4 months worth of operations. So I think a reasonable place to be to end 2020 for your recycling fund. Sanitary sewer fund, you can see that this fund has had operating income each of the last 5 years, which is a great place to be. But there are, again, significant transfers coming out of this fund, both for administrative fees to the general fund to help cover costs for accounting, finance, HR services, administration services that the general fund is providing it. And this fund also makes transfers out for debt service and capital. So after everything is said and done, actually this fund had a decline in cash of about $500,000 for the year, but does still have about a $2 million cash balance, or about half a year's worth of spending for operations in this particular fund. Finally, the streetlight fund. Franchise fees coming into this fund are more than adequate to cover the operating expenses for the year. The intent of this fund, though, is to put some of those dollars aside on an annual basis to ensure that there are resources available when renewal and replacement costs come up for the streetlight utility. And this fund, again, is performing according to expectations from our perspective as well. So I hope that gives you a good overview of each of the operating funds of the city, the funds that the citizens of the city are most interacting with, and also gives you a good comfort level as to the solid performance of the city for 2020. That one is officially in the books. You can monitor 2021 in the context of your performance for 2020. And also, as you look ahead to 2022's budget, know that you have that foundation to move forward. So I will leave it at that, but I'd be happy to stay on the line for any questions or elaborate on any questions you might have regarding either the audit results or the city's financial performance.
Thank you for an excellent report, and thank you, Finance Director Paul Seth. I have no questions. I've heard and had opportunity to review this and meet with you earlier. Let's see if there are council questions. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very thorough report, so thank you for that. And, I don't really have any questions. I think it'll just be interesting to see how, it looks in the next couple years. Thank you.
Councilmember Cave.
Just a comment. I want to thank Ms. Paul Seth and her team for doing another outstanding job. It's a great relief when you're on the council to know that the finance director, the responsibility of the finance director is taken so seriously with her, and she does a great job. And to have an audit come in and to let the citizens know, and if the citizens are listening, let them know what a fantastic job she is doing and her team is doing, and the policies and procedures. It's just it's a comfort to know that you're there. So thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, Mayor. This was just as good the second time through. I agree with I agree with Councilmember Cave. Kudos to Ellie and Joe and their staff. These things don't happen by accident or by a stroke of luck. There's a lot of planning that goes into this and a lot of what I call educated guesswork based on experience. And come through a year as volatile and uncertain as 2020 in this good a shape is phenomenal. So, and we, the council, had basically nothing to do with it. It was the finance people and our management. So I thank management and the finance department for taking care of us, all of us. Thanks.
You bet. Totally agree with comments from my fellow council members. It was a really uncertain year, and this was an excellent report. And I will say that we had a little something to do with it in that, we agreed with staff wholeheartedly that we needed to make some changes early on in the pandemic. And that kind of planning ahead really pays off. And this is just another example of that. So we need a motion, council members, to accept the 2020 annual report. I'll make a motion. I move to accept the Maplewood 2020 annual comprehensive financial report.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman. The motion to accept the Maplewood 2020 annual comprehensive financial report. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's take a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. We have another presentation. This is concerning the Maplewood Residential Recycling and Trash Collection Annual Review. Ms. Finwell, this is your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So tonight we are here to discuss the Recycling and Trash Annual Review. So I have a short presentation here for you and a couple guests to introduce. So we'll start with recycling. Tennis Sanitation, of course, is our recycling contractor. They handle the single and multifamily recycling within the city. They have been our recycling contractor since 2011. Their current contract is a 5.5-year contract from January 1st of 2020 to June 30th of 2025. So we're in year 2 of that contract. The contract does require an annual review, which outlines a recycling report, which is submitted by the hauler, and it identifies materials collected, the type of services they offer the city, as well as a recycling work plan that the city and the hauler and our environmental commission work on together to propose improvements to our services. And that's something that they'll work on over this year. The 2020 recycling report that was submitted by Tennis Sanitation outlines just a host of information, and I'll pull out a few items. One is the composition study that Tennis does for the city yearly. They take a week's worth of recycling and they tip it and sort it and determine the amount of materials that are within our recycling program. And it's usually over the last few years has been a high amount of cardboard. But I did have an opportunity to participate in that composition study in 2020 in October. So it was pretty entertaining. And you also see some of the materials that unfortunately get in the recycling cart that shouldn't be there. Like we saw a lot of styrofoam. The second item I wanted to touch on is education tags. So whenever the truck drivers see a cart that has materials in it that shouldn't be there, they place an education tag on that cart, and then they identify it in a report for us. And one of the items that we are seeing a lot of, again, is that styrofoam. So we'll have to concentrate on more education in that regard. The report includes a lot of data, And here's just a snapshot for you. So you can see the overall average pounds of recycling collected per month in our single family and multifamily has increased from 2019. So that single family increased 2.59 pounds. And again, that's an average monthly amount. And then the multifamily increased by 0.47 pounds. And consecutively, you can see the tonnages increase as well. And then, of course, with the business and churches, which during COVID, were mainly shut down, we're seeing a decrease in that. In the contract, churches and small businesses can opt into the city's recycling program at the same rate as the residential recycling. And right now we have 28 churches and businesses that have opted into the program. So the 2021 recycling work plan that our Environmental Commission reviewed includes a household count audit. So Tennis Sanitation bills the city of Maplewood for its recycling. So we want to make sure that we have the correct household audit, the household count. Recycling cart audit. A few years back, Tennis expanded their recycling cart offerings from just the 65 gallon for single family and 35 for townhomes to the 35, 65, and 95 for all homes, whatever an individual wanted, at the same cost. So we really haven't been tracking who has what size cart, and that's an important element as we move forward with our pay-as-you-throw methodology with our trash hauling, because we'd like to see, of course, that the recycling carts get bigger and the trash carts get smaller. Education to reduce residuals, and those residuals are those items that shouldn't be found in the recycling cart, like the styrofoam. And then multifamily and business recycling improvements. And in this new contract, Tennis does offer recycling dumpsters. Previously, it was just carts, and that has proven challenging for some of our larger apartment complexes who would prefer to have these recycling dumpsters. So now we can offer this as part of the program. And we'll work to make some improvements on those offerings. Now I'd like to turn to the trash and yard waste contract with Republic Services. So they cover the single family trash and yard waste collection, not the multifamily. And that contract has been in place, well, I should say, they've been our contractor since 2012 when the city of Maplewood first organized its trash hauling. And the current contract is in line with the recycling contract now as a 5.5-year contract from January 1st, 2020 to June 30th of 2025. And again, that contract requires the same report and work plan. So their report that was submitted did outline some of the things that they worked on in 2020, which is a sustainable cart management plan. I'll just touch on that. When we first organized our trash hauling, we ordered 10,000 carts, and the carts had a 10-year warranty. So because of all the intricacies of organizing trash hauling, we didn't have a clear plan as to how we go about purchasing the carts after the fact. We just thought 10-year warranty, we're good for 10 years, but no, that's not exactly how it worked. So over the last few years, we've come up with a system where we are now better tracking this and identifying when we need to purchase the carts. And then finally, the pay-as-you-throw schedule I wanted to spotlight. So 2021 was the first year that we implemented that. In the contract, it does allow the city to work with the hauler, Republic Services, to adjust the disposal fee and kind of create greater variation in the cart size pricing. And what we're trying to achieve here, of course, is to encourage people to take that smaller cart because of the pricing scale is less. And now, since we're only working with that disposal fee, we probably won't meet our goal of this 50% change in pricing per cart size, but it is something that we're working towards. And you'll see that again later this year as we work on the 2022 rates. They submitted a lot of data, again, similar to the recycling report. And you can see that the trash with residential has gone up about 725 tons, and the bulky items as well, 822 tons. Much of that likely is due to the COVID shutdowns and people staying at home. You will notice that the townhomes and manufactured homes increased. When we first organized our trash hauling, townhomes and manufactured homes could opt into the city's trash hauling program with the thought that many of them already had a contract service, so they were already organized within their own neighborhood. And initially we captured that 144, so we got a few more in 2020. The permanent exemptions, that decreased. Again, this was kind of, the number reflects an audit, so it's not exactly 100% over 1 year, but that 264 was the original organized collection amount and how many people decided to opt out of the city's trash program because they had an environmentally responsible way of dealing with trash. And now that's decreased, so we see that that issue, kind of is resolving itself. And the the trash and yard waste work plan. So what we're looking at for 2021 is one thing I wanted to spotlight is the Net Promoter Score report and customer service improvements. Now, this is something new in this new contract with Republic Services, and we do have a representative from Republic Services to go over this a bit more. But the benchmark net score in the contract is 11.5, and the reports that Republic Services submitted reflects that their new score is 19.2. So we're seeing an increase in that score, which represents customers are more satisfied with the service. And since this is something new for the city, we would like to see a report of what this all means and the type of improvements that Republic Services have made and will continue to make to service the city of Maplewood and our contract. So with that, tonight on the phone, we do have from Tennis Sanitation, Willie Tennis, who is the owner, and Angela Heyman, the city liaison. And from Republic Services, we have Beverly Mateason, our new municipal services manager. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. I know I always find it very, very helpful. Let's see if there are any council questions. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Yes, my question was for the trash contract. I noticed that it was 5.5 years, and I was just wondering how that came to be.
Thank you. The switch from the contract at the end of the year to the beginning of the year was challenging in that we were originally proposing to roll out new carts for our recycling program, which would have proven challenging during the winter months. So that was one of the reasons. And another is for the billing purposes. So it was just determined that having a contract end in the middle of summer was beneficial to the city rather than having it end at the end of winter.
Any other questions?
Nope, thank you.
Councilmember Cave.
Yes, just one comment. I did want to thank Willie Tennis. In our report, we also have a appendix that talks about complaints and compliments. And the compliments that you received, and many of them, it looks like recycling. Two of them I couldn't tell, but I'm sure they're recycling and with the Republic Services. But the comments that were made by your staff, Willie, to go above and beyond, you're not getting complaints. And so most people don't even bother to send something when they're happy nowadays. And the thank yous and the stuff that they said your guys or gals did when they're picking up recycling is going above and beyond. And I think the citizens of Maplewood, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much. And that's all.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we are fortunate with our recycling contractor because, for one thing, we can recycle more things than many places do. He has found outlets for things that other people haven't gone the extra mile to find. A comment about the education tags they have had to leave. And it says two things to me. People are careless and we need to do greater education. There was a piece on the local news about a week and a half ago with another recycler, and they have the same problem. Because the generators of the trash or recycling want to get out from under being guilty of generating this stuff, they put a recycling sign on anything that looks like it might pass. And we need to be better at helping people understand no styrofoam, no matter what color it is, you cannot recycle styrofoam. And we have to keep pounding on that because, people turn it over. It's from a TV dinner. It's from a doggy bag. It's whatever. And so we really have to get out there and let people know that that is not okay. It doesn't happen. There's nowhere to take it. And I would encourage people to be a little more careful. I don't really think your trash can and your recycling can are the same color, but you're wrong. It's not a very nice thing that the recycler has trash to sort out of his recycling. They have enough to recycle try to sort out. So I think we need to be a little more careful. But I am glad to see that the rates are up in spite of a year of chaos. And it's one of the reasons we are in environmental studies because we have a very good participation in our recycling. And I want to thank Sean publicly because she's the one who had to basically take on these two contracts this last time, and they are complicated, as you can see, and all the little details you have to attend to. So I appreciate the effort that went into this. We are doing very well in this particular vein, and it isn't automatic. It takes effort on staff's part and on our vendors and by the participation by the citizens. So I appreciate people's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Juniman. I had one question. This is kind of in the vein of what Councilmember Cave about her comments. I think as the council, we're most concerned about customer service and about price. Are we getting the best service and is it at the best price? And are our residents happy with it? And, Mr. Tennis, I really appreciate the extent that you went to in terms of the comments about the service that you're providing. I had a question about Republic and the kind of the way that you're evaluating customer service. It's really not clear to me, and maybe this is either a question for Sean or for Ms. Mathiasen, but my question is, you use detractors and promoters. Can you explain that system? And then also, your report indicates that you're going to supply a report on customer service improvement. When can we expect that? So I don't know who would be answering the question, but explaining your system of promoters and detractors. It appears that your customer service evaluations went down. And I just want to make sure, am I reading that correctly or not? Ms. Finwall or Ms. Mathiasen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is Ms. Mathiasen on the line?
Hi, thanks so much. I just finally got my little button where I could unmute myself. So thank you for your patience. Technology is wonderful.
When it works, yeah.
When it works, yes. First of all, I want to thank you very much for inviting me this evening. It's good to meet all of you. It's been my pleasure to be working with Sean Finwall here now for maybe almost 2 months. And so I would like to demystify our net promoter score and how this works here at Republic. So we have actually not 2, but 3 different means of scoring, or 3 different types of scoring. It all starts with our survey. Our we have random surveys that are given out to our residents who call into our customer service team. And they will either rank us as a promoter. They'll be identified as a promoter or neutral or a detractor. So they're lumped into 3 different categories. And that in those surveys then trigger a local response to residents, to Republic, if the resident ranks us as neutral or a detractor. And so with that, our staff then receives that information, and we conduct a root cause analysis and resolve the individual's concern. And in some cases, it's appropriate to make some internal changes to prevent future concerns, if need be. And I'll move into that in just a moment. Some examples actually are we have a knowledge management tool that our call center agents use. When a resident calls in, it pops up and it gives them all the contractual information and obligations. So that way the agent can answer the questions and help the resident according to the contract terms. And so what we'll do is twice a year, I will go in and I will review all of we call it KMT, the knowledge management tool. I'll go in and I will take a look at that tool and compare it to the contract language to make sure that at any point during the year, changes weren't made to that document. The more accurate that document is, of course, the better feedback the agent can give and better service they can give to the resident. Also, another example of this would be call recordings. We pull call recordings and also give individual representatives or agents additional training and coaching. That also helps reduce any errors or misinformation. And sometimes it's not even as much as information, it's just coaching as to how communication styles and communicating effectively with the residents. And then also sometimes there's residential expectation resets or perhaps more education. In some cases, sometimes our residents have a misunderstanding or a misperception about their trash collection. An example of that might be, you missed me and I had my card out. And we'll go in, we'll do root cause analysis, and we'll see that, yes, we were there at 6:50 a.m. where learning from the resident, but I always have it out by 7 a.m. Again, just an opportunity for us to level set with the resident and help them understand how they can best place their cart and how they can set it and get it out there on time. Also, communication mechanisms to ensure that they are correct and efficient. I'm speaking in terms of like weather delay communication, alerts, and handling those as quickly as possible. And so I will be working with Sean to make sure that Republic is aligned with the city so that as we approach winter, we're on top of those with effective messaging and prompt messaging so our residents don't have to call in. The more proactive communication we can do on our end, the better. It's just a better customer experience. And then lastly, I wanted to let all of you know that, we really are committed to providing the very best customer service we possibly can. So in all of these steps, we're making improvements, and we're even going beyond NPS now. We now are obtaining some of our feedback through Google reviews. And so that has been insightful as well. In fact, last week, our report ranked our customer experience 4.7 out of 5. And so sometimes we gain some new perspectives from that vehicle. So we are, like I said, very committed to improving our relationships with the residents in the communities that we serve. And in 2020, our overall score came in at 19.2. Now, I looked at the scoring, the average scoring here for 2021 thus far. Granted, we're not quite at the halfway mark of 2021, but I was very pleased to see that we are currently sitting at a 34, which is an increase of 14.8 over last year. So we are trending favorably, and we will continue to take steps for continuous improvement. And so I believe that by doing some of these things that I've listed here this evening, we are making that we're making that positive shift. 34 is a very good score.
Thank you for those comments. You indicate that you're going to supply a report on customer service. When could we expect that?
When would you like that report?
Well, I don't want to tell you what your timeline is. It just indicates that in your summary that you're going to provide this, and I wanted to know when we could expect it.
Okay. I guess I thought that was happening right now. If you'd like that in writing along with the data that I just shared, I'll be happy to get that to you, within the week here.
If you want to provide that to Sean, I think that would be very helpful, and she can make sure that it gets disseminated to the council.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll see that happens.
Thank you very much. So, council members, we have a motion before us. Would someone like to make it to approve the 2020 recycling and trash and year-end reports?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 recycling and trash collection year-end report and 2021 recycling and trash collection work plan.
Is there a second? Moved by Villavicencio, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the 2020 recycling and trash collection year-end reports and 2021 recycling and trash collection work plans. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Juniman.
Yeah, I just like to add that the information you were just given, and the reason this is getting their attention is during that last negotiating for the new contract, this was something that Sean was very definite about with Republic. The customer service was of ultimate importance, and they needed to be on top of it and reporting back. So I want to give her some.
I remember that, and that's why I asked the question. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, then let's take a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
I move consent agenda items G1 through 10.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the consent agenda items G1 through 10. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Moving on, we have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. We are moving on to new business. And the presenter tonight, I believe, is going to be Mr. Thompson to start us off.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we are bringing tonight the Council a resolution for abating public nuisances at 1212 Skillman Avenue East. And in order to begin that conversation, our city attorney does recommend that we go into closed session for that discussion. And we have provided on page 445 of your packet the recommended first statement from the mayor and then the proposed motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. There's also a recommendation as to a statement that I need to make prior to the motion, and so I'll do that. The city attorney is present to discuss the merits of the case, the proposed resolution, and potential strategies moving forward. The need for confidentiality in discussing the initiation of such legal proceedings outweighs the purposes of the open meeting law because our legal counsel intends to frankly discuss the potential strengths and weaknesses of the proposed action, the city's litigation strategy, and the city's potential options if litigation is initiated. With that, would someone like to make the motion to close the meeting?
Pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3B, I hereby move to close the meeting and go into closed session to discuss a decision to initiate litigation regarding the hazardous and nuisance conditions at 1212 Skillman Avenue East.
Is there a second?
Hello?
Sorry,
Is it-
I'm yelling. I was on mute.
I'm sorry, what?
I was on mute. Second.
Oh, okay, moved by
Sorry.
Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to go into closed session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's take a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, which means we are going to go into closed session at this time. So we leave this Zoom meeting and go to the alternate closed session. We have returned from closed session, and I will make the motion to approve the resolution ordering the abatement of conditions creating a public nuisance and hazardous property existing at 1212 Skillman Avenue East. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman. The motion to approve the resolution ordering the abatement of conditions creating a public nuisance and hazardous property existing at 1212 Skillman Avenue East. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Nay.
Pardon me?
Nay.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Moving on to our next item, the purchase agreement with Real Estate Equities for sale of property at 2501 London Lane East. Mr. Thompson, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this agenda item is really the next step in the sale of the former fire station property in South Maplewood on London Lane. As you recall from the recent past, we went through a solicitation of offers process to vet offers for the purchase. And at a meeting in March, the council approved a letter of intent with Real Estate Equities, which outlined the general terms for the purchase agreement. And it also acted as an exclusive negotiating period for the buyer to negotiate for the sale. I'm happy to report we have agreement from both parties for the purchase agreement, which has been drafted by Mr. Beatty. And the major deal points are all the same in the purchase agreement as they were in the letter of intent. So it calls for a sale price of $1.75 million. You would have a 120-day due diligence period where the developer can do reviews of environmental, regulations, financing, other items to review to ensure that the development is feasible and possible on the property. There are no extensions to that 120-day due diligence period. So the earnest money goes hard once that 120 days has expired. In terms of earnest money, there would be $25,000 in initial earnest money. And as I mentioned, no extensions for that due diligence period. Closing date would be by the end of the year, December 31st, 2021, but does allow the developer one 90-day extension to the closing date. Again, that's exclusive to the closing date and not to any of the contingencies around that would be allowed during that due diligence period. And in talking to the developer, the reason they not anticipated that they would exercise that extension, but the reason for that is the potential that some of their financing sources take longer to put in place. So it's just additional time that's needed to facilitate the closing of financing on the that's needed for them to purchase the property. And if they do, I should note that if they do take that extension, it would require an additional $25,000, which would be in earnest money, which would not be refundable at any time. So as I said, that is all those terms are consistent with the terms that were reviewed in the solicitation and approved in the city's letter of intent with Real Estate Equities. So we are requesting the council approve the purchase agreement. It's certainly not the final step in this application. They will be required still to submit the standard land use applications for review by the Planning Commission, CDRB, and ultimate approval by the council. And then we will also bring to the EDA the final terms of the tax increment financing for the affordable housing component of the project. And both of those items will be forthcoming on future council and EDA meetings. So with that, Mayor, as I said, we recommend approval of the purchase agreement, and Mr. Beatty and I are here for any questions that the council may have.
Thank you very much for that report. Any questions, council members? Councilmember Villavicencio.
None, thank you.
Councilmember Cave.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman. Councilmember Juniman.
My mute button hates me. No questions, but this is great. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions either. Council members, is there a motion?
I motion approval to purchase the purchase agreement with Real Estate Equities, Inc. for the sale of property at 2501 London Lane East.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the purchase agreement with Real Estate Equities for the sale of property at 2501 London Lane East. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. We have one last agenda item. That is the private water main agreement for 2142 and 2144 Arcade Street. Mr. Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve Love. Sorry, Steve, Public Works Director.
Yes,
Steve Love.
good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen here. I thought this map here would help us kind of talk through what this agreement is about. So the properties of 2144 and 2142 are just northeast of County Road B and Arcade Street. They're highlighted here in blue. As you can see, they are not adjacent to Arcade Street. They don't have actual frontage against that roadway. The city owns a piece of property, and this isn't right away. It's actually a piece of property that the city owns, highlighted here in pink. Currently, there's a sanitary sewer force main that runs down here that serves some of the homes farther back closer to the lake. And the property of 2144 and 2142 have a private driveway agreement over this piece of property with the city that allows them to have access to Arcade Street. And it also spells out the conditions of that access where all maintenance responsibility is that of the property owners. 2144 and 2142 are currently served by private wells, and the owners are looking to make a connection to the public water system. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. There is an existing St. Paul Regional Water Service main out here in Arcade Street, and we have stubbed a water service out to the right of way for future extension to properties. So what is being proposed is a private 2-inch water main that will run the length of the property and then split out and provide connections to both properties. This agreement is between the two property owners, the city of Maplewood and the city or the St. Paul Regional Water Services. The agreement spells out the conditions. In short, the city is allowing the water main to be built on its property, and it allows St. Paul Water and to it allows the property owners to have that water main built at their cost. Maintenance would be their cost as well. And St. Paul Water would supply the water then. There's no cost to the city related to this. If the council approves the agreement, it would be pending the approval by the board, by St. Paul Regional Water Services Board. And then the city would record the agreement against the property in favor of the other two properties for the water service. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Let's see if there are any questions. Councilmember Villavicencio.
No questions on this.
Councilmember Cave.
Just Steve, I have why do we own this little strip right there?
So as near as I've been able to find, it's about 41 feet wide, and we own this strip because there is a sanitary sewer main that runs the length down here. There's a lift station in this area, and then we have public sewer to kind of serve these homes that are farther back.
Okay.
And that's my understanding of why we have it. Like I said, it's not right away, so it's actual piece of property. That's why we're having to look at providing an agreement versus if it was out in the if it was public right away, we could just allow it to happen.
Okay. I was thinking bocce ball. Can you imagine all the courts we could put there? No, but otherwise I have no questions because I think that's an easy move for them to make, and I'm for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Here I ask, how did this happen?
How did what happen?
How did these two houses end up back there with the inability to hook up to things like, I mean, is this a really old plot that they bought these properties and they were just there and then there were things built in front of them? Is that how that happened?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. And as you can see, when the water main was installed, it was done with the intention of being able to provide water service to some of these homes.
That is really strange. Okay. Thank you.
I have no questions. Councilmember, there is a motion. Would someone like to make it?
I move to approve the attached private water main agreement with St. Paul Regional Water Service on the property owners of 2142 and 2144 Arcade Street.
For second.
Subject to the.
There's another part to that, though.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well, direct mayor and city manager to sign the agreement pending the approval by the St. Paul Regional Water Facility.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave. The motion to approve the attached private water main agreement with St. Paul Regional Water and the property owners of 2142 and 2144 Arcade Street, and direct the mayor and city manager to sign the agreement pending the approval by the St. Paul Regional Water Service Board. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Councilmember Juniman.
Is there anything foreseeable that down the road somewhere, if something, if it broke or would we ever be on the hook for this?
Mr. Love, do you have an answer for that?
Mayor and council, so this agreement lays that out. Any future, all the construction costs and any future maintenance would be the responsibility of the two property owners.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So let's move to a vote. Councilmember Villavicencio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cave.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And that ends the agenda for us tonight. Council members, as we've done during the pandemic, we have had an opportunity, each one of us at the end, if there's any concluding remarks you'd like to make, anything you'd like to add, your thoughts. We'll start with Councilmember Villavicencio.
Thank you. I just want to say that it was great to be at the grand opening of the Hy-Vee store recently. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, I highly recommend it. And I think it's a great opportunity for Maplewood, and it's great to bring more jobs to Maplewood. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
Everybody just enjoy this cool down this week and look forward to seeing you in July.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Well, I'm with Councilmember Villavicencio. Welcome to Hy-Vee, and hopefully I'll eat your hearts out. I'm not coming there anymore. So it's a lovely facility, and I hear they were very busy all weekend, so that's a good thing. And we did hear a lot of information tonight about good things going on here, both from the finance department and our contracts with recycling and trash. And we got some more things accomplished, and we're getting so good at this. Let's see if we can move this efficiency over into being in the same room. That'll be interesting. Enjoy the weather, and hope it doesn't get nice.
Thank you for those comments. And council members, I'd like to thank you for joining me at the Hy-Vee. You're right, Councilmember Villavicencio. It was a wonderful grand opening. It's a beautiful facility, and how marvelous that last count, they were closing in on almost 400 jobs, which is really exciting for our community. So with that, everyone, thank you for your help tonight in conducting the business of the city. Have a good night and stay cool out there. We know that the heat is coming back, I think, next week, but let's enjoy it while we have it. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We're adjourned.
Thanks.